Kia ora and talofa. It's a real pleasure to be here. And let me first of all just start by acknowledging the traditional landowners and custodians of the land we're meeting on, both past and present. And also acknowledging the presence of Honorable Davidson, the leader of the Green Party, who's also here, Tuvalu's High Commissioner to New Zealand, His Excellency Feue, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. And I do apologize to the organizers for the roller coaster journey that we've been on to get to this meeting. I was supposed to attend, and then I wasn't going to attend, and then I was going to come online. And then just last week, I sent a message and said that I could actually make it because I was in Fiji. So apologies for the inconvenience, but it's really good to be here with you all and to share our story from Tuvalu. And just for the record, I was a minister up until August of this year. I stepped down to focus on another important work that I was leading, the review of our constitution in Tuvalu. And I'm pleased to say that it was passed just about a month or two ago. But I'm just your humble member of parliament at the moment, so don't call me minister. I know a few of you have called me minister. And as the MC had mentioned, I'm probably best known for the guy who stood in the water and gave a speech. And I get a lot of that wherever I go. Some are calling me Aquaman. They have all sorts of names for me. No, it's good I guess to get the attention of the world and to bring a bit of focus on the challenges that we're facing in Tuvalu and other Pacific Island countries. Unfortunately, that doesn't always translate to concrete climate action. But I think it's important that we continue to advocate and do what we can to bring the awareness to the world. And today I'll be speaking to you about the Future Now project. And when I was minister for about 4 years, I was looking after the Justice, Communications, and Foreign Affairs portfolio. And so the three initiatives under this project, under those three portfolios that I was looking after. I came in with the mindset that I have 4 years in office. Don't know whether I come back or not, but I want to do as much as I can in office. I know we've been advocating for decades on the international stage, and it's been disappointing at times seeing the responses from leaders, world leaders. But I try to focus my effort on things that I can change, and I leave the rest to fate. And so this is a very proactive approach that we've taken in the government when we came into office. And we launched the Future Now project. And the Future Now project represents the government's plan for the worst case scenario. So we were thinking, if all else fails, how do we best prepare for the worst case scenario? And scientists are saying that the worst case scenario for Tuvalu is, we could be fully submerged by rising sea levels within the next 50 to 100 years. But I think before that happens, I think the conditions at home will become so harsh that people would have to leave the country. I mean, we're already facing severe droughts, very strong storms and cyclones, and so it's becoming increasingly difficult to live in Tuvalu. And so the worst case scenario, I think every year as time progresses, the worst case scenario is becoming more and more of a reality for us. And so the Future Now project is a proactive approach looking at how we can best future-proof Tuvalu in the event that the physical land territory disappears in the next 50 to 100 years. So there are three key initiatives under this, and I'll spend some time talking about each one of them. The first one is focused on Tuvaluan values, and the second is on statehood, and the third is digital nation. And all three are all interconnected and related and overlaps in some places. But I'll spend a bit of time speaking on each of these three. And if we have time at the end, then we can accept questions. All right, so on Tuvaluan values, the focus was to how can we best operationalize some of the underlying principles and values that underpins our culture and our practices. And I understand that there is this understanding that culture is something that is practiced in the community. Others say that it's part of the informal system, that there is an informal system and there's a formal system in countries of the Pacific. And so there's this understanding that these things are left within the community. But the approach that we've taken under this project is how can we bring this into policies? How can we implement these in legislation? How can we use these principles in the way we conduct ourselves on the international stage? And so the focus of this particular initiative is looking at the cultural practices and drawing out some of those principles and values that underpins those practices. And so our foreign policy, the Sikulangi, was launched in 2020. And it was quite interesting because before we developed the policy, we had a nationwide consultation. And many people were asking, what is the relevance of Tuvaluan culture to the international stage? And I mean, that started our whole consideration and looking into this issue of culture and how can we mainstream it into policies and legislation. And three key concepts under our culture came through very strongly in those consultations, and it's reflected in our policy. The first is Olanga Whakawhenua. Olanga Whakawhenua is communal living systems. As we know that in many of the Pacific Island countries, we live in communities. We're community-based. We value relationships within the community. There's a strong emphasis as well on your responsibility to your family, to your clan, and to your community. And so many of the values and principles that underpins our way of life are very much focused on the well-being of the community. And an example of that is our land tenure system in Tuvalu. And I think this is similar to here in New Zealand and other countries as well in the Pacific. The land tenure system is such that a family or a clan all have an interest in the land. It's not owned by an individual. It's focused on the collective interest. And so everyone has a collective interest and also have a collective responsibility to the family. And so we wanted to draw out the principles that underpins our way of life, and then we use those principles in policies, in even developing systems within our country that supports and strengthens those values and principles. And I always like to think that the practice of culture is different from the actual principles and values that underpin it. The practice of culture are the things that you see, the presentations, the maybe songs that we sing, or dances that we learn. But behind those things, there are principles, there are lessons to be learned. And it's very important for us to be able to draw that. Because I think if we just maintain the practice, and I think it's important that we continue to maintain the practice, but if we lose the spirit of that practice, then it almost defeats the purpose of why we're doing it. And so this exercise that we went through was, it was very fulfilling for me as well to really sit down and ponder and think more deeply about the principles and the things that lie behind our culture and our practices. And I think this is very important because some of the practices may not be relevant on the international stage, but the principles and the values that underpin those practices are relevant. Because when you frame it in that way, then the principle becomes universal in a sense. You can apply it at your workplace. You can even apply it in your home, how you relate to your wife, how you're raising your kids, how you conduct yourself at work. And so when we looked at some of these concepts from our culture, we understood that these are ethical and moral principles that underpin many of our cultural concepts. And so we have Olanga Whakawhenua, Kaitasi, which can be translated as shared responsibilities, and Fale Pili, being a good neighbor. And so these are very important concepts that we've taken, we've adopted, and we've included it in our foreign policy. And so the question is, how is this relevant to, say, the international stage and how we relate with other leaders in other countries? Well, I think it's very important because the world has also become like a community. You know, for decades we've been building our connections, improving trade, integrating our countries to the global economy. These things have been ongoing for decades, that we've become so interconnected and we've become like a single community. And so in that, we also become vulnerable to each other's actions. If a country behaves in a particular way on the other side of the world, it also affects us in the Pacific. And so that's the global context that we now find ourselves in. But the challenge is, we're a community, but nations are still behaving like individuals and not considering the bigger picture and the impacts of their actions on others. And so this is why I believe many of these cultural principles and values that underpin our way of life in communities, I think we're best placed to speak to the world about these things. These things are not just concepts that are foreign to us. We've lived with these things for centuries in our communities. And so this has been a very interesting exercise for us, highlighting this in our foreign policy. And it's been very empowering as well for Tuvaluans to see that we also bring something to the table. It's you know, we don't have to follow the narrative that we are weak, we're insignificant, we have nothing to offer. In fact, this policy comes in the opposite direction. It says that we have something to offer. We can be bold, we can be confident, we can share our story to the world, because the solution to many of our problems can be found in these principles that I'm touching on right now. If leaders can understand that we are a community, if we can change our behavior, our mindset, and even sometimes maybe balance out our national interests with the interests of the whole world, the well-being of our global community. And I think at the heart of this, it really comes down to human nature. As you know, as an individual, we're driven by self-interest, but there's also a part of us that tells us what is right and what is wrong, our conscience. And I believe that everyone was born with a conscience. And this is the conflict that is in every individual. And this is why nations behave the way they behave, is because behind nations are people, are leaders. And they wrestle with all these conflicting interests. But you know, the approach that we want to take is not to condemn people, but to empower them and tell them, rise above the politics, rise above the, you know, what you have in your immediate, and look at the well-being of the whole world. And this is something that we've done on a local level, and I'm encouraging Pacific Islanders and all of us to take on this approach and this way of looking at the challenges that we face in the world right now. And so climate change is a perfect example of a global challenge that requires a collective effort. It's something that cannot be resolved by an individual. And so I believe resolving this climate crisis requires the world to change their behavior, to change their mindsets, not to see themselves just as individuals. And I know it's a challenge for politicians. I'm a politician myself. And I think just the way the system is set up, that you come in for 4 years and you tend to be focused on delivering something within the 4 years for your constituency. But this requires a much broader outlook, looking into the future, to the future generations. And it really requires leaders to do the right thing, to follow their conscience, that voice that's telling you the right thing to do. And sometimes it may come at a cost, but I think what is most fulfilling in anyone's life is when you're on your deathbed, when you're about to exit, that you've done something for the world, you've done something for future generations. And so that's the approach that we've taken under our foreign policy. We've tried to influence other leaders by appealing to their conscience, and I believe we all have one. All right, and yeah, I came through Fiji to get here, and whilst I was in Fiji, I have a cousin who is married to a Fijian, and they live in Australia. And they were at Fiji for a wedding, but also they were there to present their daughter to the village. They have this custom in Fiji when you're bringing your child back to the village for the very first time, that there is a ceremony. I forgot the name of the ceremony, but I was invited to be part of that. And I was just observing the culture in that, because the village came together, the families came together, and there was an exchange of gifts at that ceremony. And I was thinking to myself, what are the values and principles behind this practice? And I put myself in the shoes of that child who's, I think she's about 7 years old, and she was born and bred in Australia. But I think that experience for her will always remind her that she's a part of the community in Fiji. And that's a really, really important customary tradition in Fiji. And I'm married to a Fijian, by the way, as well. And I'm yet to present my eldest son to the village, but it's something that I wanted to see and experience firsthand before I do it myself. But it's those kind of traditions and culture that we see in the Pacific that is very much focused on the well-being of the community. This child now becomes part of the community. Everyone has a responsibility now to look out for this girl if she was ever to come and come back to the village. And I think for the girl growing up in Australia, in probably a foreign land, she will always have that experience in her heart that she belongs to a community. She's a representation of that community wherever she goes. And so these are very important cultural practices, and I encourage people to look at the spirit of that, the spirit behind the practice, and how can we best implement those principles in policies, in legislations, and how can it even guide our lives on choices that we make on a day-to-day basis. All right, so that's the first initiative, and interestingly, in the Constitution, I was telling you, we reviewed our Constitution. The last time it was reviewed was in 1986, and one of the changes that we've introduced in the Constitution is we've included a declaration of duties and responsibilities in the Constitution, because in the Constitution we have the Bill of Rights. And we understand that rights, of course, are very important, and these are concepts that we adopted when we became independent from the UK, and we know that human rights are very important to the global community. But we've seen that there's been a lack within our Constitution because human rights focuses on the individual. It focuses on your entitlement, and sometimes when you misuse your rights, you're creating this culture of entitlement. And so we wanted to balance that out in our Constitution, because in our culture, the focus is on responsibilities. It's on your obligations, what you need to do, your responsibility within your family. And so we've included that in our Constitution as a way we can balance the two out, because rights always comes with responsibilities. And in fact, I think the source of your right is someone else's responsibility. If you think of yourself as a child growing up in a family, your child is the right of your child to live in an environment that's conducive to their growth and development is dependent on the responsibility of parents. And so it's looking at it from the other angle, and I think it's more empowering when you tell someone what their responsibility is, as opposed to telling them what is their right. And so we thought about how we can reflect that in our Constitution. So if you look at our Constitution, it's online. You can do a Google search. You will find that these are some of the things that we've included in our Constitution. In our Constitution, in our preamble, we talk about values. We talk about these traditional cultural values. But I think it's important that we go further than just reflecting in our preamble to look at how we can best develop systems that are based on these principles and values. And so it's a focus on operationalizing culture in our legislation. And so I thought I'd just share on that. All right, let's move on. The other initiative, the second initiative under this this project is looking at the statehood of Tuvalu. Under international law, there's a general understanding that in order for you to exist as a state, you need to have a physical territory, a permanent population, an effective government that is in control, and also the capacity to enter into relations with other states. And this is reflected under the Montevideo Convention that was adopted, I think, in the early 1900s. So if we were to take that definition and those criteria on statehood, then Tuvalu faces the challenge of losing its physical territory, or even losing its population if the population was to relocate to a different location. And so we began to think about how can we best safeguard our statehood, because statehood is really important for us because it's basically your identity on the international stage. It gives you certain rights to international organizations. There are sovereign rights that you have, your rights to your maritime zones, your rights to, for us, the internet domain name. We have this internet domain name .tv, and we're making a lot of money from the sale of that every year. And so that is really, really important to us to be able to safeguard those sovereign assets. And those are all linked to your status as a state under international law. And so it's quite valuable to us. And so we wanted to look at how we can best safeguard our statehood in the event our islands are fully submerged in the future. And so there are two approaches to doing this. One is to engage the UN systems, and that takes quite a long time, and we've done that. But we've taken also a proactive approach. We've put in our foreign policy that any country that wants to establish ties with Tuvalu, diplomatic ties, or renew diplomatic relations with Tuvalu, that we are insisting that you recognize our statehood, that it's permanent regardless of the impacts of climate change. And so we first reflected this in our foreign policy in 2020. And up till today, we've signed joint communiques with 12 countries recognizing this legal proposition that our statehood is permanent regardless of the impacts of climate change. And we've also included this in our constitution. I think that's probably the strongest statement that we can make, is including this definition also in our constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. And so statehood under our constitution is defined as, that's what you see up there, the state of Tuvalu within its historical, cultural, and legal framework shall remain in perpetuity in the future, notwithstanding the impacts of climate change or other causes resulting in loss to the physical territory of Tuvalu. And so the approach we've taken is to create new customary international law. And the way customary law is developed under international law, it just takes one country to break off from the norm and do something on the international stage. And the more countries that follow that practice, the more countries that follow that practice, then it contributes to the development of new international customary law and new standards under international law. And so we're the first nation to have this definition declared first of all in our policy, and then in our constitution in September. But we've also been working with the Pacific region. And just last week, or about 2 weeks ago, at the Pacific Island Forum, it was reflected in the outcomes document of the forum. And there was also a declaration on statehood that was passed by the leaders. And so this adds all the 18 members of the Pacific, of the Oceania, which includes New Zealand, that all now recognize this legal proposition that statehood is permanent regardless of the impacts of climate change. And so our hope is that other regions will also adopt this definition of statehood, and it will become customary international law. So we've been very pleased with this news that came out from the meeting in Cook Islands. And so that's the approach we've taken. And I'll come to got 10 minutes left. This is the last initiative, the digital nation. So as I said, I was the Minister for Communications as well, and so ICT was under me. And I tried to link everything that we were doing, all the initiatives that we're doing in the ministry, to bring it all together and to focus on how we can best prepare for the worst case scenario. And so the digital nation my definition of a digital nation is a country that exists today, and then it migrates all its administrative and governance systems online to enable it to function as a state, continue to deliver its services to its people, fulfill all its obligations under international law. And so as you can see, this is linked back to this concept of statehood. And so if the world recognizes our statehood as being permanent, then they are also indirectly, I guess, recognizing also that Tuvalu can continue to exist as a digital nation. And so we're creating this jurisdiction online that basically is the ecosystem for everything that is Tuvalu. And part of this project, we're looking at how we can also use platforms like technologies like the metaverse to capture our culture, how we can record our history and our heritage in the metaverse. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to bring our team here to demonstrate the digital twin of Tuvalu. You wear these VR glasses and you have this immersive experience of Tuvalu. You're walking around an island and you're also interacting with me as an avatar in that space, talking to you about Tuvaluan culture, giving you a bit of the experience on the island. But that's something that is still in development, but we were able to demonstrate that at the Pacific Community Conference in New Caledonia about 2 weeks ago. But unfortunately, we're not able to have it this time. But maybe next time we'll have that ready for everyone. But the idea behind it is how can we best use technology to improve the lives of the people? How can we best use the technology, the latest technology to preserve our culture? And so that's what we've done. And this is basically at the heart of this is digital transformation, digitizing our government processes, which makes it easier for people to access services. It improves our data collection. It helps government make informed decisions based on data that is collected. And so although we look at this as something that is in the future, but the benefits are actually immediate because it improves life for Tuvaluans, wherever they might be in the world. And so I know the media has taken the metaverse aspect of this project and they've really run hard with that. But the metaverse is only one part of the actual project. The most important part is what is linked to this issue of statehood and how we can best improve life in Tuvalu through technology. And so as part of this project, we've created a digital twin. And we started with this island called Afualiku. And it's one of the smallest islets that form the capital, Funafuti. So Funafuti is made up of, I guess, there are 32 islets that form a lagoon around Funafuti. And this is one of the smaller ones. And we thought that this will probably be one of the first ones to go, given its size. And so we've created a digital copy of it. So what you see there is pretty much the same as what you would see in real life. And last year, I delivered a speech to COP20, was it 27? 28? I've lost count of all the COPs. But I delivered a speech on that island. And as the camera panned out, I was standing on a digital island. I wasn't on the physical island. And so part of the messaging was also to reach, to bring awareness to the world that a country like Tuvalu is preparing for the worst case scenario. And hopefully people can put their feet in our shoes and see what it feels like when your country is preparing for migration. And so that was part of the messaging. But creating a digital twin serves many purposes, and I've listed a few up there. One of which is to archive our history and culture. The other is also to do projections and modeling on the impacts of climate change and changes to the actual islands in Tuvalu. It's also a place for Tuvaluans to stay connected. It's a digital experience that remains accessible to every individual, any person who wants to access this space. And I've been really excited about the cultural aspect of it because it's a really effective way of communicating and sharing your culture with the younger generations. And I think the younger generation would like to learn about their culture. I mean, I'm thinking of Tuvaluans that are living overseas. You can learn the language in this sort of immersive experience. And if you look at the way technology has evolved, everything is becoming more and more immersive. If you can imagine your first mobile phone that you owned, all you could do was SMS texts and phone calls. But now you have videos, and it becomes a more immersive experience that you have with technology. And so people are saying that the new frontier of the internet is actually the metaverse. It's a more immersive way to interact with content. One initiative as well, as part of this project as well, we're creating the People's Archive. And we're asking every Tuvaluan, what is one thing that you would want to preserve? And so people submit certain artifacts. It could be a song, it could be a story. All this is we're looking at how we digitize this and store it and preserve it for the future generation. And just last night I was going through this slide again, and I crossed out ARC as in ARCH and put ARK. So I think that's a really cool name to have as an archive. So that was just done last night, the People's Archive. And so I'm looking at this as a digital ark. And as you know, an ark is created for the crisis. And so this is our digital ark that will preserve everything that you know about Tuvalu, our history, our stories, everything. And so it really, I think it drives the message that we're preparing for a worst case scenario. And so if you hear about this in the future, you note that the Ark was invented in Wellington, the People's Ark. All right, and we're running out of time right now, but as I said, we're asking every Tuvaluan what is one thing that they want to preserve, and we're digitizing this and recording it in the metaverse. It could be artifacts, it could be something that is of value, it could be an old radio, could be something that was given to you by your grandfather, something that has sentimental value to Tuvaluans. And so this is the People's Archive, and we want the Tuvaluans to take ownership of this. This is something that they build over time, and it's something that will be ongoing. And we will also link some of these things to particular areas in Tuvalu. So if you go to visit a particular island of Tuvalu that's in the virtual space, you can click on certain links and be able to access certain artifacts or stories from that particular area. All right, so we're probably out of time, but that's a summary of the 3 key initiatives under this project. And I mean, as you listen to the presentation today, there's also messaging through this, and this is for us is very important to share this message effectively to the world. I know we've been advocating to leaders over the years, but it hasn't been really effective. Leaders have not taken strong enough climate action, and so we're reaching out to the people. We're reaching out to young people, to our elders, because I believe the power is with the people, and it's the people that will put pressure on their leaders to take stronger climate action and to develop policies that addresses issues that we're facing right now in the world. All right, thank you very much for listening. There's probably 2 minutes for a question. It's up to you, moderator, but otherwise, thank you very much.
Okay, let's take a seat.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, Simon. Thank you very much for that. My microphone's coming off. Everything's fine. We actually have 10 minutes for questions. So if you have a question for the Honourable Simon Kofe, please go to slido.com. You can use the code NDF23, and you can also find that link in the NDF app, in the conference guide, and on Not Twitter. Thank you so much for that. I just want to start with the ARC. Thank you for putting that in Wellington. What would you put in the ARC? What's your contribution?
I think I'll probably capture stories from our elders. I think that's something that is really important for us to remember the stories. And not just the content, but the way it is shared by the elders and the nuances behind that. And that's something that we can use technology to share that. And so maybe my grandkids will be able to to hear that coming from their grandfather or great-grandfather, a story that was told to me. And so that's something I'm very keen to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We've got our first question in on Slido. How do you protect the digital sovereignty of Tuvalu from future monetization? So a lot of Web3, a lot of internet, everything gets taken over by major companies. What happens, like how do we make sure that future generations don't have to pay for access to their own culture?
Yeah. Now it's a very important point, and it's something that we've been looking at in the past year, is looking at what is the best platform that we can use to house our data. We're also very concerned about the kind of platform that we use. And if you look at the world as it is now, there are just a few entities now that are in control of most of our data. Some of the big players like Amazon, Google, Facebook. And so we don't want our data to be in the hands of just a few. We want people to have that ownership over their data. And so we're exploring technologies like blockchain, decentralized networks to be able to house our data. But that's something that I think we're still in the early stages, but it's something that we need to resolve pretty soon once we create everything and everything's ready.
Absolutely. I can imagine there's maybe one or two technological challenges with moving an entire country online. Because with the blockchain especially, but other technologies, they have a major environmental footprint themselves. How do you offset?
That's correct. I mean, those are the issues that we're grappling with as well. But I think there are solutions out there that addresses some of those concerns around environmental issues, the consumption of electricity. I think there are some platforms that are now addresses those issues. So, but we're still at the early stages of exploring and looking at what is best for our people.
Fantastic. I'll change tack a little bit. A lot of the people attending today work in the culture sector, in the arts industry. What would your call to action for arts and cultural leaders be to help with this project?
No, as I said in my presentation, at the heart of it is technology is a tool that is in our hands, and we can use it for good or we can use it for bad. And this is why I think it's very important that we're grounded in our values, we're grounded in these principles, because technology is what we make it to be. And so our approach is to use technology to improve the lives of the people. And I'm very excited about the capabilities of technology now to be able to preserve our culture. And I guess the call to action is to encourage people to look at innovative ways to capture our culture.
Fantastic. Speaking of capturing culture, a couple of the questions that are coming in are about data sovereignty and how do you build protections into the collection of the data itself and the systems that hold it so that it's to limit the overreach either from big tech or from future governments getting access to their citizens' data.
At the moment, the data is being stored locally. As we capture data from the people, we store that, and we also need permission from individuals, whether they'd like that to be shared with the world, or it's something that can only be accessible to them. That's all part of the policies that govern the work that we're doing.
Great. And we've got two questions here. I'll probably merge them together. I have just had a hard drive fail, and I've lost sort of about 10 years of work. What's the plan for, I'm fine, it only cost $1,000 to replace. What's the plan for technical redundancy and either conserving the digital mediums that you're working within, or do you have exit strategies for leaving the metaverse if that fails or becomes redundant, things like that?
So at the moment, we're focusing on the infrastructure in Tuvalu, because internet at the moment is via satellite, and we all know the limitations of that technology. But it's been a blessing in a sense, because it gives us time to prepare for when we do lay the submarine cable. That's something that's in the pipeline. So we have a submarine cable probably in the next 2 to 3 years will be landed in Tuvalu. But once that is landed, it opens up the world to us, and it comes with its risks and challenges and security issues. And so we have this leeway to best prepare ourselves, to have the legal frameworks in place, develop the right policies, and have the right security measures in place before we land our submarine cable. But at the moment, we do have that limitations with connectivity. We're trying to store things locally. We are also using a cloud service as backup for what we are collecting. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that is all we have time for. Everybody, please thank the Honourable Simon Kofe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have a lovely day.
Thank you.